Elon Musk and Donald Trump have a 2-hour conversation, and the mainstream media absolutely lose their minds over it. Why? Well, we'll shed some light on why. Also, are you so black-pilled that you think the election is over? We've got some polling information that suggests you shouldn't quite jump off the ledge exactly at this moment. There's a lot of hope right now in this campaign, trust me. Oh, and also apparently Kamala Harris is afraid to debate Donald Trump. We'll show you all the reasons why. Oh, wait, I said it the wrong way. This is what I get for being sick. Apparently, Donald Trump is afraid to debate Kamala Harris, and we'll show you all the reasons why he should be so terrified to match up against that genius of a politician, Kamala Harris. I'm sick, damn it, but I'm back today. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Sorry, I missed you guys yesterday. I missed you guys Monday, and we had to take a day off last week too. I got this sickness. It's not COVID though, I promise. But I'm wearing a mask right now anyway, just in case. Not on my face, that would be weird, but I am wearing a mask somewhere else. Go ahead and write in the comments where you think I'm wearing a mask. That'll be interesting and engaging. And since we missed our show yesterday, I thought we'd start today with a meme to make you all happy. Look. I present this meme to you because I'm told by corporate legacy media writers that Republicans are terrified of Tim Walz's overwhelming masculinity. And I think, given the context, it's important to recognize exactly what masculinity means to a blue-haired Birkenstock-wearing, never-shave-my-armpits female journalist at Politico. It's my favorite meme of the day. Works on multiple levels. Let's get right to it. Last night, why did I do that? Oh, did you see what I did, Kevin?
Whoops.
Sorry, hang on a second. Hang on. I'm not well. There it is. Last night, I'm sure you noticed a disturbance in the force as the X platform was rocked when two of the most influential human beings on the planet sat down and just sort of had a digital conversation with each other and let tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of us eavesdrop and take a listen. It was Elon Musk hosting Donald Trump on the X platform. And despite some technical glitches due to, bad actors trying to prevent an open conversation from happening, it went off eventually, and for over 2 hours, you got to hear two titans discuss what was wrong with the world and how to fix it. Without any editors, without any producers, without any commercial breaks, without any journalists fact-checking. It was completely natural and normal. This is how two people engage in a conversation. And it was glaringly obvious that one of the big problems with this on a political basis was not only did it reveal just how shallow and empty Kamala Harris is, knowing we were all thinking the same thing, that there was no way she could sustain herself with this kind of ongoing conversation, bouncing from topic to topic, from tech to international affairs to domestic policy to national security to immigration to pop culture. Not only was she incapable of doing it, but it became pretty evident very early on that the missing idiot in the room was a professionally trained journalist teleprompter reader to frame the conversation in their eyes and through their perspective, rather than through a perspective that we might care about, or for that matter, what the two people engaged in the conversation might care about. The lack of journalist in the room was glaring, it was obvious, and it was an existential threat to the corporate media that we've grown to know and hate. And so, how did they react? Well, exactly how you would react if you saw your entire existence questioned before the eyes of hundreds of millions of people.
Began with 40 minutes of silence and then a bropocalypse of politics. No matter how you frame it or what caused the glitch, what was finally said between Donald Trump and Elon Musk at last night's Big X event can largely be defined as a rant filled with familiar lies and lines of attack.
By the way, that was the intro for their news segment. This is not an opinion show, last I checked. This is their news report on how things went over there on the Musk-Trump conversation. Yes, they're biased. Yes, they're rooting for Kamala Harris and the Democrats. Yes, they're leftists who hate Donald Trump. But understand, as you see all of these reactions to what happened last night, that mainly they are terrified about their own bloated budgets and their own bloated existence. Look at how much money was spent on that set right there and on her outfit, believe it or not. Even at Talbot's, they've got a budget. On her salary, on the craft services table that's just right off camera, where they have an endless flow of snacks and goodies and food. On the special cars that drive everybody to and from the studio that they all go to. All the cameras involved in this. Elon Musk and Donald Trump sat down with a one-on-one conversation through their smartphones, and it was webcast throughout the entire universe. And we'll give you the numbers, but it's upwards to 1 billion people that have either chimed in live afterwards or have heard snippets of it in a 12-hour span since it occurred. And this is a person who's sitting there saying and realizing, oh my God, if they can do that and make news and deliver information directly to you without any filter and without us having to frame it, then why in the hell do they need me? Why do they need this set? Why do they need the craft services table? Why do they need the black cars to drive me to and from home? I better learn to code. That's what's happening here. Look at her face. That's what's happening.
Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't because she's not smart. You know, she's not a smart person. She is a radical left San Francisco liberal, and now she's trying to protect. Now she's looking like she wants to be more Trump than Trump, if that's possible. I don't think it's possible, but she wants to be more Trump than Trump. She's terrible, but she's getting a free ride.
All right, but did it do what it was designed to do, which was to put the brakes on Harris's momentum?
That's not what it was designed to do. It was designed to go over your heads and deliver information directly to us, we, the people. It was also designed to raise money, and they did actually raise quite a bit of money with this. But that doesn't stop the mainstream media from criticizing this through their own lens. See, this is the power of being in the corporate-owned legacy media. If the whole purpose of this is to just deliver your policy positions directly to the people who can't go to a rally, people who aren't getting unbiased news from anywhere else because they have to watch it through cable news. If the whole purpose is to be able to deliver information directly to their smartphones without those filters, CNN, of course, as I mentioned, would be out of business. So they have to reframe what the goals were. Oh, this is just to stop Kamala's momentum. Well, the momentum that you've created out of nothing. Let's not forget, 1 month ago, Kamala Harris was a punchline in this town. People were saying, well, Biden can't step down because all they've got is Kamala Harris. And she's a disaster. That's what was openly said by most of the people right now who are claiming that she's a transcendent political figure because they've manufactured it. But the emperor can't wear this outfit for 90 days. It's going to be revealed sooner rather than later. All right, more of the conversation here about last night.
Can you switch that scene, Larry?
Oh, I sure didn't. Boy, oh boy. I'm sorry. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. Seriously, I am under the weather.
Expect out of this conversation that we're going to see tonight on Twitter?
Well, for one, I think it's going to be a very lighthearted conversation because Elon Musk has come out and endorsed Donald Trump. I expect this to be like a bromance type of an interview where they're supporting each other. I think that Elon Musk will let Donald Trump speak all of the falsehoods and misinformation that he wants. I mean, he's not a journalist. It's not his job necessarily. Does he want to be fact checking all of the information? So I think it's just a platform for Donald Trump to come out and say whatever he wants. But the thing to remember, Cassie, is like the interview audience here is what Donald Trump needs. You see JD Vance going on Face the Nation, right? Sunday shows, traditional media, because he needs to get his name out there. Donald Trump's going the opposite route, right? He's talking to streamers and podcasters. He's going on X. He wants to rally up that sort of fringe online base. That's what Donald Trump is doing here tonight.
Well, he's meanwhile threatening to sue establishment media like the New York Times, et cetera. Sarah Fisher for us this morning. Sarah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, he's threatening to sue establishment media for, what's the word? Lying about him. I do love the whole, what should we expect to hear tonight? And then have somebody predict what we're going to hear tonight. This is how irrelevant these news shows are. Do you notice how when we talk about the news, we very rarely discuss what's going to happen in the future? You know why? Because this isn't the psychic news network over here. We talk about what is happening or what just happened and why it matters, and to blow away some of the lies that you're seeing from the media. They're filling time. What do we expect to see tonight? they say, to the dwindling audience that they have of people who aren't going to tune in and watch anyway, so who cares? But the idea that Donald Trump needs to shore up the fringe, that's his job, where J.D. Vance is doing traditional media. Here's a really great revelation that maybe they should have as part of their little roundtable discussion. The fact that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz haven't done any media at all. At all. Kamala Harris just got the cover of Time magazine and didn't even sit with Time magazine to give them an interview. She got a beautiful photo spread for the cover of Essence magazine. And while she was sitting there posing, you would think they should have sent a reporter there into the photo studio. Madam Vice President, while you're posing for this photoshopped, retouched, glossy cover photo, perhaps I can actually, ask you a couple of questions. Like, for instance, you say you're going to be tough on the border. Why haven't you done that in the 3.5 years you've been vice president? You say you're going to bring down prices. Well, what have you been doing for the last 3.5 years when you've actually held political office? You say now that you want to remove taxes on tips. Why would you the deciding vote to actually increase taxes on tips and increase the IRS enforcement to get taxes on tips? One last question, Kamala Harris. Why should anybody believe your lies? But she doesn't have to face any of those questions. They're angry that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are actually going and doing all of the things that they don't demand of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that incredible? And I'm not whining about it because they're not going to change who they are. I'm just shining a light on it so you know exactly who they are. So you ignore them, you stop watching them, and you keep your eyes focused on Election Day. But Casey Hunt wasn't done. She then had something to say about the X platform. By the way, a platform where she and all of her colleagues at CNN frequently engage in social media postings, but doesn't matter because they see X as a threat. They see anybody who doesn't play their game and read from their script a threat.
Musk's rise as a Trump backer comes as X has turned into a haven for the spread of misinformation. Since buying the site almost 2 years ago, Musk's site has struggled to control it on topics ranging from the election to the assassination attempt against Trump. Sometimes the bad information has been boosted by Musk himself, who posted a conspiracy regarding the attack on Paul Pelosi in October of 2022 before deleting Musk.
So there you go. That's CNN, everybody. CNN calling X a, what was it, haven for misinformation? That's CNN, your 24/7 home of Russian collusion. This is CNN, the news agency that told you that the Steele dossier was 100% credible and worthy of nonstop coverage, but the Hunter Biden laptop is not reliable and is probably Russian disinformation. So we're going to ignore the Hunter Biden laptop. And we're going to focus on our entire newsroom's energies and budget on the Steele dossier and Russian collusion. That's CNN calling X a haven for misinformation. I do want to make one point, though, and applaud Casey Hunt, because that mention of Donald Trump's, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which only occurred 30 days ago, that mention would have been the only mention of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump yesterday. Because that story doesn't matter anymore. The breakdowns and complete incompetence at the Secret Service, if not worse, at the Secret Service, the lies being told by the Secret Service and the FBI after the attack and during the investigation, that's not newsworthy to CNN. But at least she mentioned the assassination attempt. Oh, it was to slander Elon Musk as a conspiracy theorist, but still, I mean, good on you, Casey, for at least pointing out that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Certainly not news. Thank you. RM Void. Hey, I know you. All right. Moving on. What was actually said last night during the accident? Well, listen, there's going to be a lot of streamers who are telling you about what Musk said and what Trump said. And it was newsworthy. And frankly, kind of hard for us to condense a 2-hour and 20-minute, Kevin? I couldn't stay up for the whole thing because I got to wake up early for my morning radio show. How long did it go?
It was over 2 hours.
Yeah, it was something like 2 hours, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Very hard for us to condense that. We've got a couple of highlights here. But honestly, in my opinion, the biggest part of this story, the biggest part of what happened, like you remember the old phrase that goes back to the 60s when television news became, well, what it is now. The medium is the message. That was the phrase that was coined back then, and it became a big thing. The medium is the message. That was last night to a T. The medium, bigger than what was said, it was how it was said. The fact that we, the people, upwards to 1 billion of us, have been able to chime in on this conversation without any sort of gatekeeper. There was a moment actually when I tapped into the stream and I was listening to it, and I got a little overwhelmed emotionally to think that we're living in a time where we're able to do this, where you have the most consequential tech and financial guru in Elon Musk, who has arguably upended and reinvented the automotive industry in just 15 short years worldwide, and now has his sights set on space. He has reoriented the way the United States and other countries deliver cargo and other deliverables to orbit and to space, and now beyond just the commerce of delivering items into space for satellite purposes, or for other economic or even geopolitical purposes, but he's now got his sights set on space exploration. He literally wants to colonize Mars. He could be ultimately one of the most consequential human beings of the 21st century, sitting down and talking to arguably the most consequential political figure of at least the last 50 years, one of the top 5 most consequential political figures of the last 100 years. And the two of them are just shooting the shit. And we're able to sort of eavesdrop and listen. And I know that Elon Musk is not an interviewer. And there were a couple of times when I was like, oh, I wish you'd follow up or maybe bring up this or bring up that. But that's because I'm an interviewer. But it wasn't an interview. It was just two guys talking about the things that matter to them. And you got the feeling it's like, oh, these guys agree on so much. This is actually really cool. And something that we don't get to experience very often. You wonder how often this happens. And by the way, for good, not like a Davos conversation or World Economic Fund conversation, but I mean, actually people who have not only done it, but are able to do it to actually improve the lives of human beings. I'm sorry if I'm getting Pollyanna-ish on you, but there's so much negativity out there, and there's so many Eeyores who are looking at the ground saying, oh, it's over. They're going to help Kamala win. Oh, all is lost. And I don't have time for it. Go somewhere else. I'm positive, I'm upbeat, and I was actually inspired by what happened last night. We should all be. When that's possible, then anything is possible. That's where we are right now in this world, and we got to keep focused on that. There's more on that a little later in the show. Let's get to what happened last night.
We unfortunately had a massive distributed denial of service attack against our servers, and saturated all of our data lines. Like basically hundreds of gigabits of data were saturated. We think we've overcome most of that, and so it's now time to proceed. But as this massive attack illustrates, there's a lot of opposition to people just hearing what President Trump has to say, and but I'm honored to have this conversation. I want to emphasize it's a conversation.
Yeah, that's interesting when he laid out exactly the kind of opposition to allowing people to hear what Donald Trump had to say. They had to overcome all of these technical attacks that they were dealing with on their servers when they were ready to launch. And you have to wonder, well, why? Why are people trying to prevent him from being heard? That seems ridiculous, right? I mean, who would be against that? And by the way, it didn't work, because as of 2:45 this morning, the numbers direct from X was that the space post received 73 million views. During the same period, there were 4 million posts about Elon Musk and President Trump's conversation on X. All combined, those posts generated 998 million views. Of course, by now it's well over 1 billion views. That means people who are either tuning in at various times. There were well over 1 million listeners concurrently throughout the entire thing. And then all of the residual views of snippets or commentary about it. That's over a billion views in just a 12-hour period since this occurred and wrapped up last night. So whatever efforts they attempted to keep this from getting out there, it obviously didn't work. But one wonders what kind of dirtbag didn't want this to happen. What kind of dirtbag is so against the free flow of information so against the free speech that they would want this prevented, actually blocked and kept from going in. And we have an idea of what kind of dirtbag would do that. This is what happened during the White House press briefing yesterday. This is a reporter for the Washington Post.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that, or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that? Some of that was about campaign misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
Yeah, so that's a reporter for the Washington Post. Yeah, that would be the Democracy Dies in Darkness Washington Post. His name is Cleve Woodson Jr., and I'm sure Cleve R. Woodson Sr. is super proud of his little boy today. And he's really proud of that bachelor's in journalism and mass communication that he paid for at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Cleve is the White House reporter for the Washington Post. And, his beat, here's what he covers, everybody. He covers the White House, politics, political campaigns, criminal justice, and equity. Equity. His beat is equity. Hey, what are you covering today? Equity. There's a breaking equity story that I'm hot on the trails of. I've got some sources, confidential sources, giving me some blockbuster stories on equity. Cleve R. Woodson Jr. asked the press secretary at the White House what role the president of the United States has in stopping a presidential candidate talking on an open stream feed to the owner of Tesla, because his beat is equity and criminal justice and the White House. There was a clue in his question. Maybe you caught it.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that
there it is. Hey, Cleve, nobody cares what you think. Cleve, if your question has to be framed within the confines of I think blank, then your question is irrelevant. Cleve, your job isn't to think clearly. I need to ask this question because, in my opinion, stop right there. I love it when they reveal themselves to you like this. I hope you're paying attention. I hope you see exactly who they are. This is the Washington Post. This is Democracy Dies in Darkness. Although, based on this question, apparently the actual new watch cry is democracy dies in sunlight. Democracy dies in transparency. Democracy dies when too many people can actually hear the people who are running for office speak what's on their mind, without me filtering it for you, without me telling you what you should think, without me, Cleve R. Woodson Jr., framing it within my perspective, because I think democracy dies, all right. So then we had the governor of New Jersey this morning commenting on it. And how much do you want to bet that the governor of New Jersey didn't listen to 2 minutes of the Donald Trump Elon Musk conversation? But it doesn't matter. It's CNN. They do a morning show. They got to get a guest, and they got a governor who wants to get a cabinet secretary job. So he's going to go out there and he's going to beat up on the entire thing. So let's see.
Conversation with Donald Trump, saying this in part, that he thinks the country is at a fork in the road of destiny, of civilization, and I think we need to take the right path, and I think you're the right path, he told Donald Trump. Not a hard-hitting interview, but as Trump made the point to say he is doing interviews, Kamala Harris has not yet. Do you think that is becoming a problem for for you all supporting Kamala Harris, in that it's not just a scheduling issue?
I love the question. Is this going to be a problem for all of you who support Kamala Harris that she hasn't done an interview? Well, what do you think? We're going to seriously. I love that Elon Musk gets criticized. Well, it's hardly a hard-hitting interview. Darlin, what kind of question was that for the governor? Elon Musk is criticized for not asking a hard-hitting question. And this, could we hear her question again?
That is becoming a problem for for you all supporting Kamala Harris, in that it's not just a scheduling issue?
Yeah, boy, Elon Musk should have asked a hard-hitting question like that last night. Then he would have been able to join the club of journalists. Then he would have gotten his membership card. And what do you think the answer is going to be? What do you think the answer is going to be? Seriously. And by the way, and anybody, so she's actually buying this whole thing that the reason Kamala Harris hasn't given an interview is because of scheduling problems. I mean, last I checked, she was able to fly across the country to do a photo op with the cast of RuPaul's drag show. That didn't conflict with her very busy schedule. And by the way, they're sitting on a plane. You know, these news agencies, CNN and Politico and the New York Times, they're spending millions of dollars to have one of their reporters on the campaign plane with them, flying across the country from rally to rally. Why? Why? No, I'm seriously. You're the managing editor of Politico, and you're signing off on bills and expenses. It's like, well, we got to pay $3 million during the campaign season to make sure our reporters on Kamala Harris's plane because of all the great coverage they're giving us. Why? No, literally, they can give you the exact same coverage sitting in their living room watching television. They're encouraging it. They're enabling it. They're promoting it. They're celebrating it. She's a transcendent figure. All right, we'll get to the governor of New Jersey. Sorry.
You won't be surprised to hear I had no time for the Musk-Trump interview, so I can't comment on any content. But no, not at all. I think she's had an extraordinary several weeks. Tim Walz is an inspired pick. She's on a roll. She is, as he has said, she's brought joy back into the whole arena of politics. There'll be plenty of time to do interviews. And God knows one thing about last night without having heard it, that was no interview. So when she does interviews, she'll do it with real journalists like yourself.
Well, buttering me up will get you very far. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and they know it, honey. Yeah, it'll be a real interviewer like you, or maybe George Stephanopoulos, or maybe Jen Psaki. I bet Jen Psaki gets the first exclusive. They're just that shameless. There'll be plenty of time to give interviews after the election. She's had an extraordinary couple of weeks. It's amazing what you can get done when you actually don't have to say what you stand for or answer any questions about, I don't know, maybe the entire nature of how you became the nominee for the party. Make no mistake, last night's Musk-Trump conversation on X absolutely broke the minds, brains, consciousnesses of the mainstream media. Just look at how they blanketed themselves in coverage. Who was this Mario Nafal who brought this to our attention? Just look at the headlines. From USA Today to Fox even, The Verge, Hollywood Reporter, CNN, CBS, New York Times, Guardian, Atlantic. It's all about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. The nature of the conversation, the parameters around the conversation, the technical aspects of the conversation, the chumminess of the conversation, the lack of fact-checking of the conversation, but nothing really about the conversation itself. The media in lockstep focused on the deliverable and the way it was delivered and the method of how Donald Trump decided to communicate to the voters rather than the actual substance of the conversation. Not only does it show their hand of how terrified they are of this new dawn that may be rising in the ability to get information outside of their gatekeeping role, but it also shows exactly why they're irrelevant. Because if they took their job seriously, they'd be spending some time talking to you about what Donald Trump had to say and why he's resonating with, well, about half of the voters in America, despite being called Hitler for the last 10 years. You know what? We rarely do this, but we're going to let the audience at Stephen Colbert's Late Show have the final word on this segment, because there was a very revealing moment when Caitlin Collins sat down for an interview, because she's a very serious journalist. You see, that's why they go on a late night comedy show, because they must be taken seriously. Although, to be honest, when I watch Caitlin Collins' show on CNN, I laugh more than I do when I'm watching Stephen Colbert. So maybe this makes sense. In this brief 10-second moment, you're going to see exactly where things stand with the corporate legacy propaganda media that we've all grown to love. Watch this.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. Oh, I know. CNN makes a. I know.
Is that supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but
Sometimes these little moments happen spontaneously, naturally, unplanned, that really sort of crystallize exactly where we are as a country. I hope whoever owns CNN at this point, is it still Time Warner? I don't think so. AT&T, didn't they sell it off? I hope whoever is actually sitting in the boardroom that oversees CNN sees exactly what has happened to that brand, sees exactly where they are at this point. Because that, can we watch again?
I guess it is. I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. Oh, I know. CNN makes a. I know.
Is that supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be a laugh line, Caitlin, but here we are. You might want to, instead of sort of uncomfortably giggling about it and wondering what's going on, you might want to look in the mirror, look at your rundown every night, talk to your producers, take a look at how you present the news every night, and wonder why, if anything you're doing over the 60 minutes you have responsibility and executive editor control over your content, whether there's anything you're doing that's contributing to that moment that you just experienced. I still have a little bit of faith in you, actually, because for those of you who don't know, Caitlin Collins, before she was at CNN, worked for a media company here in Washington known as the Daily Caller. It was run by a guy named Tucker Carlson, who discovered Caitlin and brought her into the fold and gave her start. So I know she's viewed her job through a different lens at some point in her life. She might want to provide a little reflection now and recognize that where she is not exactly where she began. In these crazy times, there is, wait, you know what? Birch Gold deserves. Have I mentioned that I'm sick? In these crazy times, there is peace of mind in security. Security for our country, security for our leaders, and security for our families. But think about this. You are not financially secure if all your eggs are in one basket. You know that, right? Gold and silver are an excellent way to diversify your savings. They're a hedge against inflation. They're a physical asset that's in high demand globally, from the wealthy to central banks. And through my friends at Birch Gold Group, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. That's right. You can diversify an old IRA or 401k for no money out of pocket into an IRA in gold and silver. This is one thing you can do to secure your family's savings. So to get more information, text Larry to 989898. Receive a free no obligation info kit and learn the role precious metals play in your overall savings strategy. Again, that's Larry. Text Larry to 989898. They've got an A+ rating with a Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. You can trust Birch Gold just like I do. Text Larry to 989898 today. Dan Goldman is a bit of a lunatic, and he appeared on Fox News. I will give him this. He goes on Fox News because here's the thing. Dan Goldman is independently wealthy. He's like an heir to the Levi Strauss fortune, and he made a bunch of money on Wall Street. And I think it was Donald Trump who pointed out that he has an uncanny stock portfolio. It's like, it's amazing. Every time some kind of legislation goes through that ends up helping a certain business sector or certain corporations, Dan Goldman somehow predicted it. It's remarkable. Who knew? I mean, seriously, I need him to manage my 401k. Anyway, Dan Goldman does go on Fox News because it doesn't matter. He's going to get reelected. So Dan Goldman was there with Brett Baer yesterday, and he, well, I mean, listen, we're used to Dan Goldman lying, but boy, he told a whopper that Brett Baer had to sort of call out and challenge. Here it is.
If I'm Donald Trump, I understand why he doesn't want to debate. Kamala Harris is
he's accepted
former
3.
prosecutor.
He said yes to September 4th, September 10th, September 17th. He said yes to a lot of them. So it's not that he's obviously afraid to debate.
No. So no. He had agreed to September 10th. Well, on ABC.
With Biden, who got pushed out.
What's the difference? Why should he not debate whoever the candidate is on September 10th as he agreed to? What is the difference between candidate Biden and candidate Harris?
He said he would do it. I'm just saying he's also agreed to other debates. You said he hasn't agreed to others. He has. It's the Kamala Harris campaign that hasn't agreed on the other side.
And by the way, I think my favorite part is Dan Goldman's face. Look at his face. He just, now that I mention it, I don't want him anywhere near my 401k. Look at that face. It's like he had just heard that Donald Trump had agreed and challenged Kamala. Kamala Harris is the one who won't commit to debates now, by the way. And I do love the narrative of what's the difference, whether it's Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. Well, apparently it makes a difference to Nancy Pelosi. Apparently there's a huge difference. Apparently there's a huge difference to Chuck Schumer and to Barack Obama. To them, it wasn't just, it doesn't really matter. Let's go with either one. No, they seem to have a preference there, Danny. So apparently, Donald Trump is terrified to debate Kamala Harris. Let's take a look at why he would be terrified to debate Kamala Harris. See, because if I'm Donald Trump, I'm going to take advantage of my first debate with Kamala Harris to bring up all of the things that the media refuses to bring up. And by the way, I would do this in the first debate because you're not going to get a chance for another debate. I promise you. So every time it's your turn to talk, you should just bring up all of the things that she said last time she was running for president. You can't really bring up the things she's running for now because she has no policies. So you just say, listen, when you were running in 2020, you said this, you said this, you said this. Here's a perfect example. Her new ad is that she's going to get tough on the border. Have you noticed that she's literally running Donald Trump's campaign right now? It's like she's running against Joe Biden. She's running against herself. Elect me, and on day one, I'm going to secure the border. I'm going to lower prices, and I'm going to remove any taxes on tips. It's literally Donald Trump's campaign. And so while she's now pledging to secure the border, here she was in 2020 running in Iowa.
Hi, my name is Sally Hartman. I'm a volunteer with the Center for Worker Justice. I want to know, when you become president, would you be committing to close the immigration detention centers?
Absolutely, on day one. On day one.
So that's Kamala Harris in 2020 promising to shut down the immigration detention centers on day one. Fast forward to where she became the border czar and she actually expanded the immigration detention centers. But even more so, and they're still overflowing because as border czar, she has lifted any sort of security on the border, done nothing to stop the flow of immigrants from they keep saying, her real job was to go and reduce the number of immigrants that were flowing and get to the root cause. You remember when she stood down there in Honduras and she said, or was it Guatemala? And she said, do not come, do not come, do not come. There's a Willie Brown joke in there somewhere, but I can't find it exactly. I'm sure you can fill it in the comment section. Anyway, they kept coming, Kamala. They didn't listen to you. But everybody who makes an apology, well, she wasn't really the border czar. She was just there to stem the flow from the source, get to the root causes. Well, she didn't do that either. If that's your argument, oh, no, she was responsible for, getting to the root cause. Well, she failed at that too. Thank you very much. But there she is saying she's going to shut down all of the immigrant detention centers, which is kind of a funny way to get tough on the border, isn't it? What exactly are you going to do when you detain people? And of course, the answer is nothing because we're not going to detain anybody. So I don't know if Donald Trump is the one who's afraid to debate. If I'm Kamala Harris, I don't want any of this coming up. See, this is the reason why I'm not answering any questions in any interviews right now. Same with her running mate. I mean, here's another thing that Donald Trump could bring up at the debate. Your running mate, the guy that you picked, what's the deal with this? Gabe Kaminsky over at Washington Examiner, frequent guest on the Larry Roundtable show that we do on Fridays. He had a scoop. As governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, on 5 occasions, hosted a Muslim cleric who celebrated the October 7th attack and promoted a pro-Hitler film popular among neo-Nazis. And then the cleric's Islamist group received $100,000 in state funding from Walz. Now, hey, Kamala, that Tim Walz guy, why is he so pro-Hitler? Why is he cozying up to this Muslim cleric who celebrated October 7th and is basically a neo-Nazi? Now, of course, her response will probably be this response that we got from the Harris campaign about Gabe's scoop. Gabby Deutsch reporting that the Harris campaign said the governor and he do not have a personal relationship. Governor Walz strongly condemns Hamas terrorism. So they don't have a personal relationship. I mean, he played host to him over 5 times and made sure that he got a $100,000 grant from the state. But they don't have a personal relationship. All right, that's good to know. At least it's just political BS, right? Oh, that's the argument they've got. Oh, Tim Walz, he doesn't really like this guy. He was just kidding. That's all. Yeah, he was just bull. That's the best they've got. You know how politicians like to bull. That's all it was. All right. If that's the case, then explain to me how Gabe Kaminsky, the same reporter who uncovered this story in the first place, found this video today. Remember, he and Tim Walz, this pro-Hitler, pro-Hamas Muslim cleric in Minnesota, they never had a personal relationship. That's the official statement from the Harris campaign. All right, let's roll the tape.
I would like to, first of all, say thank you to Imam. I am a teacher, so when I see a master teacher, I know it. And over the time we've spent together, one of the things I've had the privilege of is seeing the things in life through the eye of a master teacher to try and get the understanding. I would like.
Wow. That sounds pretty personal to me, doesn't it? So, Kamala, about this Tim Walz guy who you picked to be your running mate and be one heartbeat away from the presidency and his chummy relationship with this Hitler-loving cleric, you claim that they don't have a personal relationship, and yet he sit here and talked about how he had spent time with him and recognizes that he's a master teacher. So, tell me, do they have a personal relationship, or is he just full of shit? I'm sick. But we're supposed to believe that Donald Trump is terrified to debate Kamala Harris. Well, let's take a look at when a really, 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 really friendly cable news anchor imagine how I was yesterday when I didn't do a show. I'm sorry about that, guys. Really sorry about that. But I'm here, damn it. We're supposed to believe that Donald Trump is afraid to debate Kamala Harris instead of the other way around. Listen, imagine what it would be like when a really, 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 really friendly news anchor at CNN asks the slightest of challenging questions to Kamala Harris during a debate. Like, for instance, this moment when a spokesperson for the Harris campaign decided to sit and answer questions, because they're being thrown out there now instead of Kamala Harris because she has no time. But the spokesperson has plenty of time. They don't do anything. This is how it would go. And by the way, this woman's actually pretty good at her job. Kamala Harris is a nightmare, right? Take a look.
What's on the vice president's schedule today?
Well, she's traveling and talking to voters and getting her message out there to the American people, something that she's been doing from the very start of this campaign and something that she certainly did when she was President Biden's running mate as vice president. But look, you just mentioned the speech she's going to be giving in
that's right. I was asking about today, and I don't think she's got any campaign events on the schedule today, does she?
Well, she and Governor Walz have been traveling across the country. They hit nearly every battleground state last week. On the campaign trail, they raised $36 million within the first 24 hours of Governor Walz.
So she's spinning and she's spinning and she's spinning and she's spinning and she's spinning. But again, the question is, what's her schedule today? This is how tough the question is that she won't answer. And of course, the underlying message here is she's got nothing scheduled today. So why can't she just come and do this interview instead of you, right? Which is sort of the unspoken message.
Joining the ticket. And what she's going to be doing Friday is taking her economic message directly to the voters in North Carolina. I certainly don't want to get in front of exactly what she's going to say, but she's going to talk a little bit about how she's going to make sure that she's putting consumers first as part of her economic plan. She's going to take on corporate price gougers. She's going to take on junk fees. And that's something that, John, she did when she was Attorney General of California, something she continued to do as the United States Senator of California. So she's going to be taking that message out to voters. And I look forward to seeing more of what she's going to say on Friday.
Right, there's a little bit more of this, but did you notice something? She said, she's going to take on corporations and she's going to put the American consumer first and all these things, which is what she did as an Attorney General and a U.S. Senator. Doesn't she have another job title in there somewhere? She's an Attorney General, U.S. Senator. I could have sworn that she's had another high-profile gig recently. That's what she did then. That's what she did when she was a U.S. Senator. What? Anyone? Can you help me out? Has she had another job recently? Oh, there's a Willie Brown joke there, too. God, there's so many Willie Brown jokes. Yeah. Then she took the last 3.5 years off as vice president. She didn't really give a crap about the consumers until now because, she wants your vote. All right, so we'll continue.
I think we all do, and I'll ask you more about that in just a second. The reason I was asking about today is because it seems like she has time if she wanted to do an interview with a member of the media or do a news conference, correct? There does appear to be that time if she wanted.
Well, look, she has said on the campaign trail that she would be doing an interview at some point. She said that, I think, last week during a rope line or when she was talking to reporters. But look, what is important here, John, is that she is taking her message directly to the American people. She hit a number of battleground states. I think we had 15,000 people in Detroit last week, 12 to 13,000 in Nevada. She's been taking her message to the voters and drawing large crowds. So she's actually having those direct conversations.
But not today. All I'm saying is
not
today. She could do an interview today, I would think, because she's not out there today.
Well, look, she's taking her message directly to voters. And just because she doesn't have an interview schedule on her public schedule doesn't mean that she's not taking her message directly to voters.
Hey, by the way, if you didn't know, she's taking her message directly to voters. By the way, when Trump actually takes his message directly to voters by having a conversation with Elon Musk, that's the second coming of, Hitler Klansville, brought to you by Mussolini here in George Orwell's America. But Kamala Harris is taking her message directly to voters by reading the exact same speech off a teleprompter in a controlled environment with AI crowds. Also, did you notice how long she was able to just spin and spin and spin without any interruption? It's the little things that you notice when an anchor is interviewing a Democrat versus a Republican. But I'll give him this much. By the way, just so you know, as these TV hosts and teleprompter readers try to press for an interview, you need to understand something. They don't want to interview Kamala Harris so they can hold her feet to the fire and challenge her on issues and serve up some kind of gotcha question. That's not what they're looking for. They want a high profile. They know that if they get Kamala Harris to do an interview, that their clout goes up. They get a higher profile. They're going to get a higher paycheck. They're going to get a big primetime gig. That's what this is about. This isn't actually about trying to be a journalist and do any journalisming, I promise you. But he did actually challenge this spokesperson to some respect.
So she did say in Nevada over the weekend that she does support no taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers. I believe we heard that for the first time this weekend. So if it is something she has supported, why hasn't she put it forth in the 3.5 years she's been vice president?
Well, John, first of all, she's been the candidate for the Democratic candidate for president for the past few weeks. So she is putting it forward her own agenda. She certainly, again, has many parts of President Biden's agenda that she helped pass, that she supports, but she's also going to be putting forward her own agenda. And that's something you heard her talk about when she talked about no taxes on tips in Nevada earlier.
Oh, so this whole no taxes on tips thing is her agenda. Okay, get it right. Did you not get the talking points from the campaign? That's her agenda. Yes, that's right. It's her agenda. All right. So one must wonder how Dan Goldman can even try to stand up there and say that Trump's the one who's afraid of a debate. I mean, Kamala Harris is some pretty ripe and fertile ground there for some pretty stellar attacks. Although, to be honest, who am I kidding? We know how this debate is going to go. When's the first one's on ABC? Is that right? So it's going to be either George Stephanopoulos or this guy. See, we all know how this debate is going to go. Here's John Karl last year talking about Kamala Harris, the border czar. And then immediately we'll show you John Karl this weekend with J.D. Vance when J.D. Vance called Kamala Harris the border czar.
It was back in 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, that the president put Vice President Kamala Harris in playing a critical role in terms of trying to stop the flow of migrants across the border. I mean, she was more than 2 years ago. She got this responsibility. No, she's not actually. She wasn't the border czar.
Actually, she wasn't the border czar, right? Oh, I'm sorry, John. I thought she was because I listened to you. Sorry, I've been told that she was the border czar by a guy named Jonathan Karl. Do you know that hack? They have absolutely no shame. They have absolutely no shame. So maybe that's why Donald Trump might be nervous to debate Kamala Harris, according to Dan Goldman. Or maybe he knows that Dana Bash might be controlling one of the debates as the moderator, right? I mean, here's how she's reporting on Kamala Harris today.
If the weeks-old Harris campaign is known for anything yet, it's the viral presence online, thanks to TikTok videos like these.
As my friend Quavo would say, he does not walk it like he talks it.
No sleep. Bus. Club. Another club. Another club. Plane. Next place.
Hey, Kamala, what are we going to say to Donald Trump in November?
Bye, bye, bye. For those of us who are not Gen Z, thank you for including that NSYNC cameo. My colleagues have terrific new reporting on the Gen Z operation that is powering Harris's rise on social media. CNN's Betsy Klein is a part of the team behind this terrific piece.
Terrific reporting. Tell me more about the Kamala Harris cool factor. I just want to remind you all that a month ago, before Joe Biden stepped aside, which was less than a month ago, you remember, before Joe Biden abdicated his role, all of the parlor talk in Washington, D.C. and speculation and conventional wisdom had to do with what are they going to do? Biden can't step aside because Kamala Harris is a disaster. Nobody likes her. She is the least popular vice president in our history. She's a disaster. She's a joke. She can't make it through an interview. She can't make it through a speech. Everyone hates her laugh. She's vacuous. She's a nightmare. But boy, they all just turned immediately and did an about face and marched lockstep together. And now you get reporting like this. It's an incredible campaign. It's all built on fluff and image and TikTok videos. They haven't had to answer any tough questions, and they haven't had to put forth one policy idea of their own. And yet she's still doing great in the polls. Let's examine how amazing they are at doing nothing. Let's examine how incredibly successful and brilliant they are at shamelessly ignoring the media. Please ignore us some more, and we'll put you on the cover of more magazines. There's not 1 ounce of self-dignity left in any of these people. But yet Dana Bash will be one of the moderators of one of the debates, no doubt. That's where we are. That's where we are. Yeah, listen, maybe Donald Trump has in mind that that's the case when it comes to debating Kamala Harris. But let me assure you of something. Donald Trump has known this for 10 years now. He has never had a debate situation where he's had anything but hostile moderators, including the one where he just defeated. See, here's the thing. Donald Trump's already defeated his opponent in this election. Nowhere, no time in the history of American politics has a man had to run against two different opponents in a presidential election. He's already defeated one, and now he has to ramp up an entire new campaign against a new candidate. But he will, and he'll be fine. And we can't wait for the debates, even if it is John Carl, George Stephanopoulos, Jake Tapper, and Dana Bash moderating it. That said, I need to talk to you for a minute. Are you listening to me? Are you there? Listen, I know that I was out sick yesterday, and I had to miss the Thursday show last week, too. I've been under the weather. I've been sick. But I've been seeing what a lot of you have been saying on social media. I've been reading the comments in a lot of our videos. I've been sensing dread. I've been sensing some level of black pill amongst you all. That you suddenly think, oh, that's it. The cake is baked and the script is written and it's completely rigged and they're going to steal it and we're going to lose and the country's going to go down the toilet and there's no chance. Are you kidding me? Are you there? Hey, stop it. Stop it. We'll have none of that here. What is the matter with you? Have you seen the guy who's the Republican nominee for president right now? You know, the guy with a hole in his ear from a bullet that almost shattered his skull a month ago? You know, that guy with the blood streaked down his face, lifting up his fist and encouraging you to fight. Have you decided you're not going to fight? Really? Why? Because of Tim Walz? Because of folksy tampon Tim? What has happened? Stop it. Stop with the black pill. No matter what you're seeing out there, first of all, it's not even September yet. You have no idea what's going to play out between now and election season, number one. Number two, I tried to plan and prepare you for all of this. Do we need to pull back the show? We'll find what show it was several months ago when I said that Joe Biden was not going to be the nominee, that Kamala Harris was going to be the nominee. I had predicted that Biden would step down from the presidency itself and Kamala Harris would run as a transcendent figure, the first female black president we've ever had. That still might happen, by the way. I told you that she was going to enjoy this unbelievable media orgy and this honeymoon that will make any honeymoon you've seen of a newly elected president look like, you know, a day at Niagara Falls. I told you this was going to happen. You should have been prepared for it. This is fine. You need to keep focusing on what matters in this election. You need to keep focusing on what we can do. And by the way, given the again, I'll say it, orgy of positive, you know, orgasmic coverage of Kamala Harris, take a look at this analysis of the recent polls because it actually hasn't done much in the grand scheme of things.
I want to take a step back and sort of point out we've kind of been here before. So August 13th, how far were the polls off in Michigan, Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin? And this is in 2016 and 2020. Trump was estimated both times around and by significant margins. Take a look here. In 2016, the average poll in those states that I mentioned, those Great Lake battleground states, Trump was underestimated by 9 points on average at this point in 2016. How about 2020? It wasn't a one-off. Look at this. He was underestimated by 5 points on average. And of course, Kamala Harris's advantage in those New York Times Siena College polls were 4 points in each of these key battleground states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. The bottom line is this. If you have any idea, if you're a Kamala Harris fan and you want to rip open the champagne bottle, pop that cork, do not do it. Donald Trump is very much in this race. If we have a polling shift like we've seen in prior years from now until the final result, Donald Trump would actually win. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I am saying that he is very much in this ballgame based upon where he is right now and compare that to where he was in prior years.
We certainly heard the Harris campaign saying we have to keep fighting.
Absolutely.
This is definitely not over. All right.
I love, by the way, there's a little bit more of this, but you just heard my conversation with you where I said, stop with, get off the ledge, stop being black-pilled. There's still an opportunity here. In fact, forget about an opportunity. As far as I'm concerned, this election is well within the grasp of Donald Trump if they run hard and act like they're 10 points down. Okay, so stop. They're trying to depress you, right? That's my perspective on you. That's what I'm trying. Have you noticed what their perspective is? Hey, Kamala Harris fans, you shouldn't be popping the champagne corks quite yet, because they know who their viewers are. They're not even pretending otherwise. Can you imagine if they said, hey, if you're a Trump supporter out there, the people in the CNN control room would be like, there aren't any. Don't worry. Frame this properly. The whole thing is framed about how Kamala shouldn't be celebrating quite yet. But I hope you're understanding what this graphic tells you. They're acknowledging right now. This is what's his name? Is it Harry Enton?
Yep.
Yeah, Harry Enton, the thank you, Kevin, the poll guy for CNN, who I appreciate his nerdiness, actually. He's acknowledging. Now, this is the poll guy. This is the guy who goes on there with the big screen behind him and breaks down all the polls for you to tell you exactly what's going on right now in the electorate. And the poll guy, whose job it is to tell you exactly what's happening right now, is doing a segment on how 4 years ago and 8 years ago, the polls were all wrong. And the implication here, and certainly the inference that I've drawn from it, is that the polls are wrong now too. So the poll guy, whose job it is to tell you exactly what's going on right now based on the polls, is conceding that the polls are completely full, which is a brilliant segment. It's like, hey, we need you to go out there and explain how the polls are all probably wrong. And like, yeah, but I'm like the poll guy. If I'm telling you that they're wrong, why would anyone listen to me about anything next time I'm on the air? Don't worry, nobody cares. It's just content. We're 24/7. We got to fill with something. So let's just, it helps us with our graphics, keeps those people employed over there that make the graphics. Just do the segment. So 8 years ago, all of the polls by mid-August projecting what would happen in November were off by 9 points. You understand, we're talking about Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin right now are basically tied, dead heat, or Trump's ahead by like 1 point. 4 years ago, they were off by 5 points in those same states. And 8 years ago, they were off by 9 points. So if you're looking at Real Clear Politics or 538 or Nate Silver or wherever you go, and you're getting depressed and you're getting upset because you think that, oh, that's it, they're going to steal it for Kamala. These numbers are meaningless right now. All right. What matters is your focus and your determination and your enthusiasm. That's what matters. And so now we'll go back here because they're trying to make it a cautionary tale for Kamala Harris supporters.
Let's talk about enthusiasm and how that translates actually. We are quite a ways out, again, 3 months about.
Yeah, yesterday I was mentioning, the enthusiasm for the Democratic ticket was up. Yeah. But that enthusiasm is not the same thing as going out to actually vote. And there's a different question, which essentially says, how certain are you actually going to go out and vote? And this is the top range, almost certain to vote. Again, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. This is among registered voters. Look at this. Look at Kamala Harris now compared to where Joe Biden was back in May. In fact, 62% of Joe Biden voters said they were almost certain to turn out and vote. Now,
it's gone down.
It's actually gone down a little bit. I would call this in the same general area at 61%, but it's basically unchanged. And look at Donald Trump. He was at 58% in May. He's actually gone up a little bit now. He's at 60% now. Again, basically no real change. So the bottom line here is, yes, there may be more enthusiasm for Kamala Harris, but the fact is we're not seeing that necessarily translate in the almost certain vote. And one little other note, Sarah, I will note this. Donald Trump is more popular today than he was on August 13th in either 2020 or 2016. So the bottom line is, yes, Kamala Harris is doing better in the polls, but there's a long way to go. The polls can shift. The almost certain to vote hasn't actually shifted, and Donald Trump is more popular than he was at either 2016 or 2020 at this point.
Those are interesting data.
Do you feel better now? Do you? You better. Snap out of it. We got no time for this. Come on, grow up. We're conservatives. We don't play that game. You stay focused. What, you want the media to give you a shoulder rub? and suddenly make you feel good about things. They don't do that. It's us against the world. You know that. But the good news is we're us and we've got each other. All right. You want one more segment to make you feel a little bit better? All right. I got one more for you. This one was on MSNBC of all places, because the conventional wisdom is that Kamala Harris is energizing young voters. Kamala Harris is energizing voters of color. Kamala Harris is energizing all of this groundswell of voters who were sort of bored and tired and not interested in coming out for Joe Biden, but boy, they're ready to come out for Kamala Harris. Really? Well, let's dive into the numbers a little bit.
With young people, is there any data on that?
So what's interesting is that young voters and also ended up black voters didn't change all that much between where Biden was in Pennsylvania in July and where Harris is now. Independents did move in Harris's direction.
Let me tell you what's happening right now. If any of these polls are tightening, and you can do this analysis yourself, you don't have to just trust me. It's really easy to find this data. Go to Real Clear Politics and always look at the five-way race, okay? There's the head-to-head, but it's stupid. The head-to-head race is meaningless because every single ballot in every single state is going to be a five-way race, or at least in the states that are battleground states. It's going to be Trump versus Harris versus Kennedy versus Stein versus West. All right. It is a five-way race. So click on the polls that show the five-way race. Now, you're going to have to open 2 tabs to do this. Okay. Are you listening? I need you to do this because you need to inform yourself. I respect you enough to get this data and this information for yourself. Don't rely on the gatekeepers at the corporate media. All right. You can do this. Open up 2 tabs. One of them is going to be Trump-Harris 5-way. The other one's going to be Trump-Biden 5-way. Okay. Sadly, Real Clear Politics separates them out. I wish, and Tom Bevan, if you're watching, I know you do sometimes. Tom Bevan at Real Clear Politics, could you please, you should have one chart that shows the progression of the polls from Biden and then transferring to Harris, all on one chart. So we don't have to look at 2 different charts. Because really it's the Democrat versus, it's whoever the Democrat nominee is, you know. Anyway, you look at it. And if you look at Trump support, Biden support, Trump support, Harris support in the 5-way race, leading right up until, what was it, the 2nd week of July or the 3rd week of July? It was the 21st, wasn't it, when Biden stepped out? You're going to see that Trump support is exactly the same. You may be wondering yourselves, like, why suddenly is Kamala Harris doing better in some of these states? Who are these Trump supporters that weren't going to vote for Biden, but they were going to vote for Trump, and then suddenly they changed their mind when Kamala Harris? Is there any person alive who was like, well, I was going to vote for Trump, but now that Kamala Harris is an option, I'm going to vote for Kamala? No, that human being does not exist. Okay? Sorry. I'd be glad to meet that person, but it's unfathomable to me that anyone has a brain that operates that way. I'm full on MAGA. Trump's my guy. Oh, Kamala Harris is an option? Oh, to hell with that then. No, here's what's happened. She's gotten Kennedy voters. That's what's happened. That's what's happened. People who could not bring themselves to vote for Joe Biden and weren't going to vote for Donald Trump have decided, and so they decided they were going to vote for Kennedy. They've now decided to jump back over to Kamala. And I think that's gonna move. And if Trump were smart, see, I think Trump should do an event with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Like the same thing that he did with Musk. The 2 of them should just have it. He said, hey, we're not going to have a debate. Let's talk about the issues. I think that would be very smart. But that's what's happened here. That's why you're seeing some movement over to Kamala Harris. As you just heard there, it's independent voters, which really are Kennedy voters. Here, listen again, though. The numbers for young voters and black voters hasn't moved much in these battleground states.
With young people, is there any data on that?
So what's interesting is that young voters and also ended up black voters didn't change all that much between where Biden was in Pennsylvania in July and where Harris is now. Independents did move in Harris's direction.
Independents moved. Kennedy voters moved. That's what's happened. That's what's happened. You want more good news? I'll give you some more good news. It's not good news, but I need you to come back off the ledge. Take a look at this. This is July voter registration numbers. All right. And it's broken down state by state by state. You can take a look at this. Political poll, polling numbers is a great account to follow. Got great information on there. I know it says I'm not following them because I've got a different account here. Yes, that's right. I have several Twitter accounts. New July voter registration. Republicans have gained 252,794 new registered voters. Democrats have lost 19,000. And it's broken down state by state. Right? So if you look at states that matter, by the way, Florida, phenomenal. The numbers here. 67,000 new Republicans versus 22,000 new Democrats in that state. But if you break it down state by state, you look at Pennsylvania, 21,000 Republicans versus 5,700 Democrats, right? Michigan and Wisconsin are not included in this download here. Why is this important? It's important for two reasons. The first is that shows you enthusiasm. That shows you very real enthusiasm and momentum for one party over the other. But secondly, and most importantly, these people right here who have just been motivated to register for the first time now, just 4 months before the election. So they're probably, it's like, wow, this is new. This is exciting. I'm registered now. I'm going to vote. You'd be surprised how many people like in their 40s and 50s have never voted for president before. I know that you and I, we're plugged in. We follow politics. We love this. We live for this. It's not just every 4 years that we pursue this stuff. This is part of our, it's like we follow our sports team. We follow our politics. That's what we do, right? But there are a lot of people who don't live like us, who don't think like us. Rush Limbaugh used to call them low information voters. It's not meant to say that they're stupid. It means that they've got, lives. They've got rich, fulfilled lives that don't revolve around politics. I envy them sometimes. They've decided this year I'm going to register to vote. And if this year you decide you're going to register to vote and you're registering to vote Republican, more likely than not, you're going to vote for Donald Trump. So they're very motivated people. Do you know what's most important? Here we go. 33, whale disease. 33 years old, never voted, now registered Republican. So here's what's important about whale disease as a perfect example. Welcome aboard, whale disease, and we're glad you're there. Here's what's most important about this. The very most important thing that you need to know about this number, by a factor of I'm not good at factors, by a factor of 10 to 1, 252,000 Republicans. Actually, it's more than 10 to 1. Sorry. To a loss of 20,000, 19,000 for Democrats. Somebody figure out the factor for me. Math. I was told there was no math in this job. Do you know what's most important about this, guys? Those people don't show up in any of the polls. Literally none of the polls. Think about it. Think about it. When you see the polls that we see right now, when we analyze this election, it is either a polling of registered voters who up until July, they never showed up because they weren't registered. Or even more importantly, the most important polls you're looking at right now, and pretty soon, most of the polling places are going to isolate down to this group of people, likely voters. Do you know how they determine who a likely voter is? They ask them a series of questions. Have you ever been asked a political poll before? A lot of people haven't. They qualify you as a likely voter at the beginning of the call. One of the things is they ask if you're registered. If you're not registered, they won't even ask you anything. They're going to hang up on you and move on. So if you don't want to deal with a pollster when they call you, just say, I'm not registered, and then they'll move on. They ask you if you're registered, but then they ask you your voting habits. Did you vote in the primary? Did you vote in the last election? Did you vote in the election before that? They have criteria that determines whether you're a likely voter or not. Every single one of these voters, every single one of them will not be included in any of the polls that say likely voters. Now I ask you something. Between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, who is most likely to have people who are first-time voters who have never participated in our system before? Who? The establishment hack, Kamala Harris? Or the trailblazing, upend the entire system, renegade maverick, Donald Trump? Do you feel better now? Have you put down the black pills? Are you ready? Are you ready? Because we can't afford to lose you. We got a lot to accomplish. Please stick with us. All right. Kevin, are you there? How are you, Kevin? I missed you yesterday when I was sick.
I'm feeling great. Perfectly healthy.
Are you fit? Oh, I'm glad to hear it. How do I sound?
Better.
Are you going to be able to edit out all my coughs and sneezes and stuff?
No problem.
I I was going to surprise you by calling an audible. I have another segment set up here that we can go. If you want, or we can just call it a day here.
I'm
But
fine.
I feel like I owe everyone another segment because I've been out. I've missed 2 shows in the last
Let's
2.
do it. Let's do it.
What do you think, guys? In the live chat, do you want one more segment? It might not be a full-blown 10-minute segment, though. We'll see. But you want a little bit more? Just waiting for a quick response here from our exciting chat, our live chat. They're not even listening anymore, are they? In Rumble or at YouTube. Jim says yes. Bob, Annabelle. Oh, we got Facebook. Look at everybody is being represented here. Every platform right there. Look at that. From Rumble to YouTube to Facebook. No one on X. No one cares on X. No one actually participates on X. X is more passive, I think. All right. All right, guys. All right. Now, we got all the yeses. I'm excited. All right. Oh, and do you like my crab shirt? Hey, Richard Murray on X is listening. Thanks, Richard. It's my crab shirt. That's because I live in Annapolis, Maryland. We love our blue crabs. All right. We're going to do one more. We'll do it live. Yesterday at the White House press briefing, there was a lot of time wasted with Karine Jean-Pierre. I don't know why. They're asking things like, well, there was one moment where they asked what Vice President Kamala Harris's greatest achievement was as vice president, and she couldn't answer. Oh, all the things. Okay, but can you isolate maybe just one thing? Well, the Biden-Harris administration, they work together. So anything we've achieved, it's her achievement too. Okay, but seriously, like what? It was painful. That was kind of funny, but there really was a lot of time wasted here, except for one line of questioning that I really want to draw attention to. Phil Wegman at Real Clear Politics. Can I just tell you, Real Clear Politics, I mentioned them a lot. I just called out Tom Bevan earlier in the program, the guy who runs Real Clear Politics, because they do a really great job over there, and they run a pretty lean machine. And they've got 2 reporters really working their tail off in Washington, D.C. right now. Phil Wegman, the White House correspondent, you see him there, young whippersnapper, and Susan Crabtree, who has been covering the Secret Service like no one else, right? All of the revelations you're learning about the Secret Service and the breakdowns in Butler, Pennsylvania, and all of the dysfunction that's going on, that's all Susan Crabtree. It's like you would think there would be other reporters just out of the competitive nature of being a reporter in Washington, D.C. It's like Susan Crabtree keeps getting all the exclusives on the Secret Service. This is a great story. I want to get in on that. I'm a reporter. I'm a journalist. I know that there's a scandal at the Secret Service. For God's sake, there was an assassination attempt that came this close away from being successful. This is a scandal of the utmost proportion. Let me in there, but no one cares. No one cares. So listen, Susan Crabtree is like cleaning up right now. So these 2 reporters are doing a great job. And I really want to highlight what Phil Wegman did here in asking some very pointed, very specific questions to Karine Jean-Pierre, because you got to be specific here. So there's 3 questions and answers that are going to be rock solid, deadlock important for this presidential campaign going forward. And you might not even notice it as it happens. But here's a little mild-mannered Clark Kent Phil Wegman. Take a look.
This is a bit of a throwback, but the vice president has said that she was the last person in the room with President Biden ahead of his decision to order U.S. troops to pull out of Afghanistan. Was the vice president in full support of his decision to order that withdrawal and in full support of the way that it was implemented?
I mean, she answered that question herself. I don't have anything else to add. It sounds like she answered the question herself, right?
She said that she was in the room previously.
But didn't you also said she was in support?
I'm asking you if the president believes that the vice president was in full support of his decision.
I believe, and as you have seen them in the past 3.5 years, they've been partners, critical partners. It doesn't matter if it's domestic issues, also foreign policy issues. And that has been the case from day one and continues to be the case. I don't have anything else.
All right. Now that's really big and quite important. And I'm sure you're smart enough to see why. And I love Phil Wegman's just sort of like checking off boxes here. Just want to be clear on this. Let's just get it on the record. As far as President Joe Biden is concerned, was Kamala Harris, as the last person in the room in the discussion about with the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Did Joe Biden think that Kamala Harris was 100% in support of his decision and his policy? By asking that question and getting that answer, he has now locked the Kamala Harris campaign in. They cannot. I mean, they'll try. If it becomes political expedient, they'll try. But it is so blatantly on the record now and crystal clear. Thanks to that. Thanks to, so you got to get them now. So Kamala Harris refuses to do an interview. She's not saying a damn thing. Why? Because she wants to be able to wait until the very last minute to say whatever she needs to say to be able to win the election as close to the election day as possible. So what do? Well, what you try to do then is to get it on record now, things that she can't weasel out of. And I'm not saying that Phil Wegman is in some way acting partisan or anything here or on behalf of one campaign or another, but I think what he's doing is sort of taking a zoomed out visionary look of the major issues in the campaign and just trying to establish the record in terms of Kamala Harris's participation with Joe Biden, because Phil Wegman seems to remember what most people in the media have forgotten, and that is Kamala Harris is the incumbent. In fact, I'm afraid sometimes the Trump campaign has forgotten this. Donald Trump won the election against Joe Biden. He's already won it. But the message is no different with Kamala Harris. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? And the answer is no, and the reason is Kamala Harris. In fact, they should stop calling it the Biden-Harris administration. They should call it the Harris-Biden administration, because God knows he hasn't been in charge. So now, as questions come up about the disaster in Afghanistan, and I sure hope in one of these debates they focus on national security and the failed policies of the Biden administration, then Donald Trump can actually raise this and say, well, listen, you were part of the decision that left 13 Americans dead. What kind of advice did you give Joe Biden? And because of that single question, Phil Wegman has locked Kamala Harris in now. I assure you, there's a couple more here, but I assure you, the Kamala Harris for President team, the comms team watching this briefing, they were not happy with how this went. Here's a little more.
Sure. You've noted how the vice president has been a partner in all of the heavy lifts over these last 3.5 years. Given that they've worked so closely together in that time, what does the president see as the vice president's biggest achievement during their time in office together?
So look, because they've been partners, those achievements have been done. Certainly, those historic, unprecedented achievements have been done together. I'll say this: the president believes in the vice president leadership, her temperament, her experience, and he has said this himself. One of the proudest decisions that he made in 2020 was selecting her as vice president, because he believed that she can go on day one. And you've seen them do that together on day one of this administration. That doesn't change. I'm not going to parse out anything from here. They have been partners. She's been a critical partner for this president for during this term, and will continue to do so. You will see them together on Thursday in Maryland, where they would talk about their next announcement on lowering costs for the American people.
Yeah. By the way, on Thursday, they're going to have a joint campaign appearance. Joe Biden's going to campaign for Kamala Harris in Maryland. For those of you who don't know it, I'm sure you do. Maryland is literally Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was carved out of Maryland. He's going to Prince George's County, Maryland. That is literally just across the border of Washington, D.C. He is traveling, I believe, 20 miles from the White House to campaign. But that was the question and answer that I alluded to earlier, that there's no daylight between the two of them. So considering she's been such a partner to Joe Biden, can you point to one specific area where she's, been the best? She can't. And there's more. Here, take a look.
There's not a specific policy achievement. It's a comprehensive whole.
I would say it's a comprehensive whole. Our accomplishments here, the Biden-Harris accomplishments, are the Biden-Harris accomplishments. She's played a role, whether it is being on the floor of the Senate, right, getting really important legislations to pass through, right, or being in the room with the president on trying to figure out how to move forward strategically with the policy or how to make tough decisions on behalf of the American people. She's been there. She has been there. These have been, and we've had, as you know, important moments, historic moments, and she's been a critical partner.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely a critical partner. All right. Well, great job, Phil Wegman, because understand what he did there. He laid a foundation to go forward. And this is so important. If you're Kamala Harris, you have to run against Joe Biden to a certain respect. You're already seeing this. You're already seeing this with her saying, you know, I want to remove, I'm for not taxing tipped wages. Where the hell have you been the last 3.5 years? Why did you cast the deciding vote to increase the number of IRS agents who then made it more difficult to not report your wages, your tipped wages, who actually put new protocols in for tipped employees to have to submit their tips and wages. And in fact, what's stopping you from doing it right now? Nothing is stopping you from doing it right now. You're running on a secure border and you're going to hunker down on the border. But so she's already starting when she said, oh, things are too expensive right now. The cost of living is too high. Biden, up until the moment he dropped out, was suggesting that this is the strongest economy in the world. You notice how you don't hear that language anymore from Kamala Harris. So she's already been attempting to separate herself from Biden. We've had a history of vice presidents running for president while the current president is still in office, right? A very brief history, but let me remind you of the last couple of times this has happened. And let me be really clear here. It's very rare that a sitting vice president wins election when they're in office. All right. Al Gore tried to do this in 2000 and he lost. It was close, but he lost to George W. Bush. Hubert Humphrey tried to do this in 1968, running as Lyndon Johnson's running mate, and he lost. Richard Nixon tried to do this, running as Dwight Eisenhower's running mate in 1960, and he lost. And before that, you got to go back to pre-Roosevelt. Why is this important? And the only one who was successful in doing it, there's only one vice president, I believe, in our history. No, that's not true. John Adams. Sorry. So there are only two successful vice presidents, sitting vice presidents, running while their boss, the president, was an incumbent and termed out, who have successfully run for election as president. George Herbert Walker Bush in 1988 and John Adams in 1800. And they were both running basically as the third term of their boss. John Adams was running as George Washington's third term, and George Bush ran as Ronald Reagan's third term. And by the way, that's all they got. Neither of them won re-election either. Now, part of that is because the American people, generally speaking, don't like to have successive, 12 years of one party is about enough. Roosevelt was an outlier there, right? Generally speaking, the American people like every 4 or 8 years at the most to switch off. It's very rare that they'll stick with the same party for 12 years, God forbid. If you notice that, just look at the ebb and flow and the pattern of just the last 100 years. That's just how things have gone. But that's part of the reason. The other part is it's politically very, very difficult. See, Hubert Humphrey, when he was running as the vice president to Lyndon Johnson was incredibly unpopular, mostly because of the Vietnam War. He was unpopular on the left because of the Vietnam War, and he was unpopular on the right because of the Vietnam War. And when you're running as the vice president, you have to take all the baggage that the president has. You'd think it would be an advantage. Oh, he's the vice president. And there are some advantages. You can fly around on government planes instead of having to pay for your campaign plane, and you get, the trappings of the office. But there's also a huge anchor around your ankle. You are tied to that administration. You're tied to that administration's policies. Now, if the administration is incredibly popular, as it was with Ronald Reagan and George Washington, you benefit from that, as Bush and Adams did. But if they're not, as Joe Biden isn't, then you have to recognize that at some point, Kamala Harris has to try to figure out a way to separate herself from the unpopular aspects of the Biden presidency. She needs to be able to have an arm's length distance. She needs to be able to say, yeah, listen, I was a loyal vice president to Joe Biden, but on this we differ. On this we disagree, but he was the president and he won out. He was able to say, well, okay, I respectfully disagree with you on that, Madam Vice President, but I'm the president. I'm going to make this decision. She could have done that on Afghanistan. She could have said, listen, this was against my judgment, but he had the final say. He's the commander in chief, and that's how we left it. But that question and answer right there with Phil Wegman in the White House yesterday prevents it, because now the Biden administration is on record saying Kamala's with us all the way. By pressing Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday and saying, well, can you tell us one specific achievement? Most of the people looked at that response and said, look, Karine Jean-Pierre can't even name one achievement that Kamala Harris had. That's embarrassing, right? And yeah, that's good for a laugh line. But what's more important politically is that Karine Jean-Pierre couldn't just leave it at that. Instead, she had to say, well, all of it. Every single historic achievement of the Biden administration is married, glued together, stitched together irrevocably with Kamala Harris. Everything we did, she did. We are lockstep. And that is devastating for them politically. They're stuck. They're boxed in. Kamala Harris cannot separate herself from anything that this administration did. And now it's up to the Trump campaign. It's up to the Trump campaign to get back to basics on this and remind the American people just how miserable they are. Forget about all the joy of Kamala Harris's rallies and the AI crowds and the photo enhancements and all of the TikTok videos and the brat summer, and stop whining about the fact that she won't sit with reporters. We'll do the whining for you. You're above that. You're the candidate. Get back to the basics. Your eggs cost $5. Your gas cost $8. Everything about your life right now is harder because of her. And we're also on the brink of World War III. And this isn't just Joe Biden's fault, because everything that Joe Biden has done, he did in lockstep with Kamala Harris. She was there every step of the way. She was always the last person in the room. And they made every decision together. This is the Harris-Biden administration. And your misery right now is Kamala Harris's fault. If not, why didn't she do something? Why didn't she say something? If she disagrees with something that the Biden administration has done in the last 3.5 years, let's hear it from her right now, today. Tell us, how do you differ from the Joe Biden policies that you've enabled for the last 3.5 years? It's that simple. Oh, you can't, can you? Because Joe Biden, through his spokesman, just threw you under the bus. Glorious. And great job, Phil Wegman, Real Clear Politics. Nice job. You snot-nosed little brat. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow, Lord willing. I'm going to go take a nap now. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me sick.